Good morning. Am I audible? So I think in last class we had discussed about, I think Marx, right? We had given a brief introduction about who was Karl Marx and what were the important concepts of Marx. So what are the important concepts I told about Marx? You'll have to know. Historical and dialectical materialism. The other important concept you have to know is class conflict. Then you have to know about view on alienation. Then you have to also know Marx's view on religion and Marx's view on evolution. Then you have base and super structure. Okay, so am I audible, right? Because I can't shout. So as long as base and superstructure. So when you read all this from this, you have to be able to deduct Marx's view on equality, Marx's view on democracy, Marx's view on state. Okay, these might be not direct. It is more indirect from ideas of Marx that what you can derive. So only when you are able to understand all this, then you will be understanding Marxian perspective of equality, Marxian perspective of freedom, Marxian view on democracy. You're getting a point? So, but these are the core ideas first you have to understand. So, even when we read understanding Marxian economics, okay, because if you look at Marx's methodology, means his way of looking at things. So, for Marx, he says that what economics is the basis. Everything is built on the foundation of economics. Okay, that is central to the Marxist thought process as a whole. To apply Marxist thought anywhere, international politics, domestic politics, even from a society point of view. Okay, to simplify things, like you can tell how from society point of view. So, if I take the example of caste system, that is Varna. Now, how Varna emerged, how it came, nobody exactly knows. Okay, there might be different perspectives about it. So, if you go to Manusmriti, it gives a perspective that each Varna came from each body parts of Brahma. Okay, that is one perspective. Or there is this Aryan invasion theory, that Aryans invaded, and that is when you can say there were two sects, Daisus and Dashas, and they got divided. Or you have the Marxian perspective, which says that Varna is an emergence of economic structure, means each person involving in certain economic activities over a period of time, now that started becoming their Varna. You are getting a point? The reason why I told, if you told the first perspective, that is Manusmriti, where I told, it is something like what Plato said, ideas shape matter. Now this is the opposite perspective. Matter shape ideas, means your material conditions will give birth to ideas. So Marx belongs to which school of thought? Materialist school of thought. So for Marx, it is always your material conditions determine your consciousness. It is not the other way around. Understand? So any kind of Marxist idea, you need to understand, they always base their ideas on what? Economics is the foundation of everything. That's why I told. That's simple. If you don't understand everything about Marxism, or you want to understand something called as a Marxian perspective on any topic, plain simple, the Marxian perspective always looks at how economics shapes your relations. Okay. So, for example, capitalist and working class, two classes, how do they emerge? based on economic criteria. Understand? I'm not telling that is a Marx point, that is a Marxist point of view. So Karl Marx gave what do these ideas, and that is why we say that economics plays a very central role in Karl Marx theories. And that's why all Marx has been also influenced by reading Adam Smith, who is considered as the father of economics in that regard. That you'll understand when you read his labor theory, where he gives the theory of surplus value. Understanding a basic idea about Marx. What is Marxist thought? Marxist thought does not mean only ideas of Marx. It might be Marx along with his followers. You get a point? Marxist thought does not mean only Marx. Marx gave the principal ideas. Based on these ideas, people who are influenced by these ideas, they might have also produced further literature. Okay. So that's why I told, what you read here, you apply it in other parts of your syllabus. It is repetitive. The syllabus might look huge, but there is nothing new. So in PSIR paper 1, part B, in Indian national movement, you read something called as Marxian perspective of Indian national movement. It is nothing but Indian historians who are Marxist by their ideology. They have written history, Indian national movement from the Marxist perspective. Understand? So when you look at Indian national movement also, you can look at Indian national movement through different lens. You can look at Indian national movement from a feminist lens. You can look at Indian national movement from a Dalit perspective. Means for Dalits, what did it carry? For example, again understanding is that you have to read works that is later we'll read. You have Jyotiba Phule, you have Ambedkar, okay, their writings on Indian national movement. Like if you take Jyotiba Phule, he's written this book called as Gulamgiri, and central argument what he makes, the British Raj was better than Peshwa Raj. Okay, meaning the British might be bad for rest of them, but British policies were good for the Dalits. Because if you look at British, what they did, they brought certain social reforms. Whether they really wanted to bring or not, secondary, but they brought social reforms like abolishing untouchability or fighting sati. So that is why what he says that the British Raj is better than Peshwa Raj. You understand? That's a Dalit perspective. Same way when you look at Indian Marxists who are there. So you have Bipin Chandra, okay. You have A.R. Desai. They have written Indian national movement from a Marxist point of view, where again you can say they are highly critical of the Indian national movement, saying that leaders who led this movement, most of them were capitalists. You are getting the point. So whatever you read here, it is applied in other parts of your syllabus. So the foundation of it is understanding ideas of Marx. And to understand Marx, you need to understand the following ideas. So in last class, I think I showed a video also why Marx is always considered as a controversial figure. Like he is considered to be God. For half of them, he is considered as the devil for the other half. So first we'll have to introduce into his influences on Marx. One of the biggest influence of Marx, or a major idea what Marx modified, was of this idea of a person called as Hegel. Okay. Hegel was also one more German scholar in that regard, and he borrowed the idea of dialectics from whom? Hegel. But Hegel had spoken about dialectics of ideas, but Marx spoke about dialectics of matter. Understood? Hegel spoke about what? Dialectics of ideas, but where Marx spoke about what? Dialectics of matter. So what do we mean by dialectics? That I think a basic idea you already have, since you have already read Socrates and Plato. Dialectics means what? Dialogue or a debate. So Hegel dialectics based on three principles or three laws of dialectics. We'll come to dialectics of ideas and matters later. First, let us understand what are the laws of dialectics. The first law of dialectics was that he told unity in opposites. So what do you mean by unity in opposites? For every idea, there will be a counter idea. Okay, if there is day, there will be night. If there is Ram, there is Ravan. Understand? For every idea, there is a counter idea. For every argument, there is a counter argument. Means this is the law of dialectics, means the law of the world. Second, he also says that second step in dialectics will be negation of negation. What do you mean by negation of negation? What do you mean by the word negation? Negative. Negation of negation means what? So basically with every argument, the negativity will start to decline. Meaning, because since we are speaking about Hegel speaks about dialectics of ideas. Let us think there is an idea A. In idea A, let us think there is 60% positive in that. 40% there is negative in that idea. As a counter to this, there is idea B. Dialectics will happen. A new idea will emerge. So, this new idea is, when you look at the negative component, it will be always far superior than the previous ideas. Same way, this means this becomes thesis, this becomes antithesis, this becomes synthesis. Every synthesis is a thesis. For that again there will be antithesis. So this is a cycle. It keeps happening. Till when? Till you arrive at a point where there is no more negativity, and that is where he says negation of negation, means with every evolution the negativity will start declining. So there will come a point where quantity transforms into quality. Means what? When you arrive at a point where there is no more negativity, means there is no more contradiction, there is no more movement. Okay, so for Hegel, he told, if you look at the world, he told world is nothing but movement of ideas, means ideas have evolved. And for him, when this movement of history will stop, when you arrive at an idea that is considered to be perfect. Understanding? So, for example, let us take for Hegel, he told God represents the perfect idea. God is perfect. The idea of God is perfect. There is no negativity in the idea of God. So what Hegel says is that state is the march of God on earth. This is a statement made by Hegel. What he says? State is the march of God on earth. What do you mean by that? State is the march of God on earth. As I said, what did he say? He said state is perfect. Why it is perfect? Because he is equating state to God. For Hegel, God represents what? Perfection. Understand? So, with the emergence of the idea of state, what do you mean by emergence of idea of state? Maybe first idea that emerged was family. Then emerged the idea of society. Then emerged the idea of state. And for Hegel, state is perfect. And that is why he says state is a reflection of God. It's an idea of God. Why God? God is perfect. So God is an idea. There is no more negativity. There is no more contradiction. So same way, if you take family as one idea, there is certain positives in family, there are certain negatives in family. Okay, what might be the positive in a family? Love. What might be the negativity in a family? That love is particular towards the members of your family. It is not going to be for everybody. Then he told society. There are certain positivity of society, like you form a group unity. But there is also certain negativity about society. Means, for example, you can say conflicts might emerge in society. So for him, state represents what positivity of both family as well as society. And for him, state does not have any kind of negativity. That is why he says that state is the march of God on earth. So there is no more evolution of the idea beyond the idea of state. Once state emerged, that is the state of perfection. That is what Marx borrowed the element of, not state is perfect, he borrowed the element of dialectics. Marx also presented his theory based on dialectics, but there is a difference. Marx did not present dialectics of ideas, he presented something called as dialectics of matter. Means how Hegel told state is the perfect idea, but for Marx he told Hegel is wrong, not with respect to dialectics. He borrowed dialectics from him. Because Hegel told ideas are far superior, ideas shape matter, so the perfect idea is state. But for Marx, he told it the other way around. Hegel is standing on his head. He is looking the world upside down. We have to make Hegel stand on his feet. Means for Marx, it is matter that is superior, not ideas, and it is material conditions that shape your ideas. So Marx presented, he took human history and he told human history is evolving. Material conditions are changing in human history. Every material condition that has existed in human history is not perfect, because same thing, thesis, antithesis. So for Marx, which is that perfect state of material existence, is communism. You understanding? So for example, for Marx, capitalism might be a thesis. Socialism is the antithesis. Communism is the synthesis. There is no better material condition than communism. So the core point here, what Marx explained was that ideas are not shaping matter, it is matter which shaping ideas. So he presented his theory through this called as dialectics of materialism. Means studying about evolving material conditions of human beings from human history. So history will come to an end when you arrive at the stage of perfection. And for Marx, when this evolution will come to an end, means evolution of material conditions of man. Communism is the perfect state, how individuals can lead their life. And that he explained through what? Dialectics of materialism, or we also call it as historical materialism. Why it is called as historical materialism? He studied the material conditions from human history. Based on his analysis of material conditions, he will identify what are the problems and how the material conditions have changed. And for Marx, in every human history, with every material condition, it does impact the society's, creation. Means at every point of human history, based on the material condition, our social relations have also developed. Okay, for example, he says in ancient period, if you take, that is slave society. He calls it as slave society. Or even before that, if you take pre-communism, means initially imagine like when you are living like tribals, there is no private property. You live as a group, as a community. So if you go to tribal areas, like if you take now Sentinelese who are there in Andaman Nicobar Islands, you don't, if you go to them, they won't have the concept of this is my property, this is your property. And hardcore tribal community who has been never exposed to human civilization, they always live as a group. Understanding? Everything belongs to whom? Community. He says that is how humans were. That is called as primitive communism. But as humans started to evolve, what do you mean by as humans started to evolve? There are some keywords what he uses called as means of production, mode of production, and there is something called as relations of production. So one thought is common in all three words, production. So Marx is giving a very lot of importance to production, right? But the three words are there, means, mode, relation, and all three are interconnected. Okay, let's go to the basic. What do you mean by production? Produce. Produce what? It might be anything, goods, food. So, what do you mean by the means of production? For example, if you want to produce food, you need land, you need labor, you need capital. These are required, right? This is what you call as means of production. What are the means you are going to produce? This you need to keep in your mind, because later when I connect to Marx's idea of economics, we'll come back to this again. Land, labor, capital and organization. Because for Marx, in all that, labor is more important for Marx. For Marx. There might be other people who might disagree with it. Okay, we'll come to that later. But for now, means of production, you understood? Like land, labor, etc. What do you mean by mode of production? How all of these are organized, that is called as a mode of production. You might have socialist mode of production. You might have capitalist mode of production. You have a feudal mode of production. It can be anything. So and relations of production means what? Those who are involved in this production, how are they related? Okay, simple example. In industrial period, it was a capitalist mode of production, factories. So basically here, capitalist, working class. The relation of production means there will be people who own the means of production or the mode of production, and those who do not own the means of production. Understanding? There are certain people who own the means of production, there are some people who don't own. So those who own during capitalism, they become capitalists. Okay, or we call as the bourgeois. Those who don't own, they become the working class, proletariat. You understand? I have gone far ahead, I have gone into capitalism. Let's come back to now primitive communism. So here, since there is no private property in primitive communism, and here the mode, see, with every human age, okay, with every evolution what we have seen, our ability to control the mode of production has increased. Okay, so if you go to tribals, their ability to control the mode of production is very less, means their control over environment. With every age, our ability to control production has increased. Understanding, right? So what Marx says that initial period when there was primitive communism, there was no private property, everybody lived in a community. But what happened later? He told with growth of, from hunter gatherers, we became agricultural producers, settled. Now this brought private ownership of property. Lands are owned by some. So during the slave society, he says, slave was an important component of the economy. Slave himself was a property. Means you can buy slave, you can own slave. Because slave is a major part of your production. That's why even when you read Aristotle, he defended slavery on the grounds of what? Usefulness. So here what Marx says that in slave society, masters and slaves are the relations of production. Okay, there's a group called as masters. They own whom? They own these slaves. There are those who are have-nots, who are their slaves. They don't have anything. They're bought and sold like a commodity. This is one period of human history. That is the slave society. In slave society, if you go to the means of production and mode of production, almost it was the same. Land, agriculture, but it was all small scale land. You had slaves, etc. Now let's go to medieval period. That is the feudal age. Now here you can say there is a change in the mode of production. Why change in mode of production? Now because with agricultural developments, now you have large estates which are owned by lords. And serfs are those people who work on these lands, like zamindari. Because in England it is called as lords and serfs, or in Europe. In India, the similarity what we draw is the zamindari system. Same in zamindari system, zamindar owns the land. The people who work on the land, they are working for. If you grow 10 bags of rice, you keep 9 bags zamindar will take. Okay. Compared to a slave, maybe the life of the serf is bit better because he has some protection. But still there is no change in relation of production. Still haves and have-nots. You are understanding? What Marx is saying is that in every human history, the mode of production, the means of production, relations of production are changing. But one thing has remained common. Haves and have-not. Means at every point of human history, there has been two classes since the birth of private property. And the relation between these two classes has been not good. It is based on exploitation. It's based on one class, that is haves, will exploit the have-nots. Understood? Human history is explained. That is only what we call as historical materialism, how material conditions are changing. With change in material condition, that is how we understand mode of production, means of production, relations of production. Now, from feudalism, if you move towards, like you take industrial revolution happened in England, scientific development happened. Now, those who had lords, etc., or now the mode of production changed. Now, agriculture was no longer the major mode of production, it became industries. And who controlled the industries? One who had capital. Capital means money. You're getting a point. Today also if you look at money or a capitalist is very powerful. Why? Because today to start anything, money becomes important. To own a land, you need money. To buy labor, you need money. So capital has become central. And that is why now you can say share markets are very important. And you can say capitalists are the ones who can control the markets. So for example, you can say that if you are owning a large amount of shares, if you have invested crores, I'm not speaking about lakhs money. Imagine like you're a foreign institutional investor. You can make markets fall, you can make markets rise, right? So yesterday, I think, if you had invested in defense shares, you would have become rich overnight. I did become. But you need to be smart for it. Why? Because simple. Yesterday, if you see, after India-Pakistan war, the government of India said we are going to manufacture more BrahMos missiles, etc. The government conducted a meeting called as Cabinet Committee on Security. Post that, if you see all the defense companies, their share has risen by 700 points. Yesterday only it rose by 300 points. So plain and simple, if you had, let us say yesterday morning, had you invested around 10 lakhs in any one of the defense share, you would have immediately got returns around 3 lakhs, in 1 hour or 2 hours. But you need a lot of, because you can lose also like that only. I've lost also like that only. So both can happen. Unless you know it very well, you can't. So capital becomes very central. That is why the name capitalism. So now what he says, feudalism will go, capitalism will arise, with industries now being the major thing. Now again two classes are here. The haves are called as the capitalists, haves are not, are called as the working class. You are understanding? So what did Marx explain in historical materialism? So he took human history and he dwelt into the evolution of human history and he told how it has evolved. That's why I told, for him, what Hegel is speaking of, dialectics of ideas, he told that is not correct. He told dialectics of matter. With changing material conditions, there is changing ideas. So that is why you need to understand these three keywords: mode of production, means of production, relations of production. Understanding? At every point of human history, you have to look at what was the means of production, what was the mode of production, what was the relation. So the names of classes have changed. So from primitive communism, we move towards slave society. There were two classes: masters, slaves. From slave society, we move towards feudalism, lords, serfs. From that, we move towards capitalism, bourgeois, proletariat. But what is one common in all three? He says that haves are exploiting the have-nots. Understand the point till now? Because it's all interconnected. We'll see them as theory separately, but this is what you need to understand, an important component of Marx's idea. Understood till now? What do you mean by historical materialism? What do you mean by dialectical materialism? Dialectics, there are three laws to it: unity of opposites, negation of negation, quantity turns into quality. So who gave this idea? Hegel. And Hegel spoke about dialectics of what? Dialectics of ideas, because Hegel is an idealist. He is similar to Plato or Socrates. But Marx belongs to which school? Materialism. So what did he say? Hegel is standing on his head. We have to make him stand on his feet. Because for Marx, ideas do not shape matter. It is matter which shapes ideas. So that is why he used to explain the evolution of human history using the material development of human history. Means for Hegel, the history is a movement of ideas. For Marx, history is a movement of matter. Understand? For Hegel, he told history will come to an end when we arrive at the perfect idea. And for Hegel, which is the perfect idea? State. But for Marx, he disagrees. He says that what? History is a movement of matter, and when history will come to an end. Come to an end means we arrive at a material condition where there is no more contradiction. That is communism. But now we have still only discussed till capitalism. Because in Marx's historical materialism, slave society, feudal society, capitalist society, these are all already have existed. These are all not prediction. These are all explanation. Socialism, communism is his prediction. You are getting a point? Till now what he explained, this he used human history to tell this is what has happened. But hereafter he will predict this is what is going to happen in future, 100% this will happen. Understood? So, historical materialism or dialectical materialism, it has not yet come to an end. We are arrived at capitalism. Now, this is where what Marx will give his next two ideas of revolution and class conflict. Class conflict already you have read. What Marx says in his book, that Communist Manifesto, he says, the history of hitherto existing societies has been history of class struggle. Read again. The history of all hitherto existing societies is history of class struggle. So what did you understand from that statement? This is told by Marx in his book Communist Manifesto. I repeat again what he says. The history of all existing or hitherto existing societies. Hitherto means until now. So, same, it is nothing but a statement connected to his historical materialism. If you look at human history, till now, whatever societies that have existed, all these societies, central feature of these societies has been class conflict or class struggle. Means there has been conflict between two classes. So, which were the hitherto existing societies? There was the slave society, and here conflict was between whom? Masters and slaves. Then which was the society that emerged? Feudal society, lords and serfs, and then you had capitalist society, you had the bourgeois. Bourgeois refers to capitalists, and the proletariat. Proletariat means what? The working class. So the history of all the existing hitherto existing societies until now has been what? History of class conflict. Means at every human age there has been conflict between two classes might be different. Here it is masters, slaves. Here it is lords, it is serfs. Here it is capitalists, it is working class. Means every change of mode of production, with every change in the means of production, it is also bringing change in what? Relations of production. Means new classes are emerging. But fundamental thing is that what? Every society has two classes. That is haves and that is have-nots. And the fundamental relation is what? Haves are exploiting the have-nots. Understood? Now, with the emergence of capitalism, we'll come to capitalist period. I don't know, till now what Marx told, what has happened he is explaining. Now what he is going to tell? Prediction. So Marx's prediction is that he told capitalism or capitalism, they sow the seeds of their own destruction. I repeat again what he said. Capitalists sow the seeds for their own destruction. What do you mean by that? According to Marx, capitalism inevitably destroys itself. The other way, for Marx, there can be no socialism without capitalism. It's a process. Every society will go through what? Becoming a capitalist society, and inevitably that a society will give birth to what? Socialism. That is why he says, within the womb of capitalism, the seeds of socialism are sowed. Means capitalist conditions will lead to birth of socialism. The question is that how and why? How it is inevitable, or what he mean by capitalists will dig their own graves. So for this you need to understand first of all capitalism. In simple terms, capitalist, as I told, we have already discussed, capitalist central means one who has money, businessman. So if you take Ambani, Adani, etc., they're all capitalists in that regard. Now, one thing about capitalism, because see, again, this is a debatable argument. Now we have counterpoints for this also, but now we are sticking out just with Marx, from a Marxian point of view. So from a Marxian point of view or Marx point of view, end goal of a capitalist is profit. There cannot be any kind of capitalism without profit. That's a principal argument. Any kind of capitalist. For example, now I am also a capitalist. So what we are doing is not service here. It is danda, business. You are paying, I am teaching. No payment, no teaching. No profit. If see, let us think only 2 people have taken admission to the class. Only 2 people. We have 60, 70. Just 2 people took admission. Economically, it is not possible for me to conduct the class itself. Why? Because I am going to calculate, right? Okay, I need around 100 classes. So 100, at least 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Time I need to invest on those 100 classes. So what will be my remuneration? So every goal of every capitalist is what? Profit. So what Marx says that profit is the end goal. No capitalist will survive. But to make profit, what Marx says, capitalists will have to inevitably exploit. He will have to exploit. He will exploit. And this is where he brings, I told, if you remember his theory of surplus value, I don't remember the means of production: land, labor, capital, organization. Capitalists, okay, now we'll get into capitalist mode of production. Means in this type of society, what production is happening, the product what is being made, the capitalist is owning that property. Why is he owning it? Because he says, I have invested money. You might have given your labor, but I own it. Okay, so for example, let us take, now Vinay sir owns this academy. Vinay sir is not doing any teaching. I am not complaining then. But the classroom belongs to him. The board belongs to him. The benches belongs to him. So obviously he is taking a share of profit. Why? Because now his argument will be that tomorrow if admissions don't come also, that's my loss. Still I have to pay you. Tomorrow admission increases also. It's my gain. So end of the day, what Marx says that among the 4 elements, land, labor, capital and enterprise, for Marx, I'm telling, for Marx, for him labor is more important than compared to all other 3 elements. And what he says, among land, labor, capital, enterprise, only one is animate. The other all 3 are inanimate. Means only one is living. Labor, the only one thing that is creative is labor. So for Marx, technically, whatever production that happens or whatever product that comes, a major value of that product is emerging from labor. But he says the capitalist is taking the major profit in the name saying that I have brought your labor. That is only called as theory of surplus value. Surplus value means extra value, means whatever profits that are generated are being pocketed by the capitalist in the name saying that what he has invested. And here the worker, for him, is given only minimal payment. And the other thing what happens is that in capitalism period, the number of workers are more, the number of capitalists are less. So obviously the demand of labor decreases. See, in simple example, in India, in our country, you might get a domestic help to come and work in your house for 5,000 rupees. Let us say you go to Finland or Norway. There for you to hire a maid, it is very, very costly. Why? No, one is cost of standard of living is high, but the thing is that in those countries, the labors are very less. Recently, there was an Hindu article written where they told everybody bashes inequality, but this person had written an article saying that, but on the utilitarian side, there is some benefits also of inequality. For example, right, inequality means some are very rich, some are very poor, or most are very poor. Now, let us think you are living in a society, you are almost equal. She is a doctor, he is an engineer, he is also something, everybody. Now, who is going to be the garbage cleaner? Nobody is going to do the work. Either you have to bring automation or the value of the garbage cleaner will go up so high, means you have to pay a very high cost. And that is why if you go to Europe, where the standards of living are very high, there finding a maid or a help is very costly. And one of the reasons why these Europeans, they allowed immigrants from this Africa and all for cheap labor. Simple, it is this cheap labor who are going, because to hire their labor it is going to be very costly. Currently in India we don't have that problem. Why? Because our inequality is very high. So obviously labors are very cheap. Marx is speaking about, let us say, England in 17th century, 18th, it was more resembling how we are today. This question that asked in your world history, that England of 18th century resembles the India of current comment. Same thing, that time if you take in England also, same problem. Labors are much, there is no demand. Capitalists, they will control the labor. So obviously, I will tell, will you do for 1,000 rupees? Now she is ready to do for 850 rupees. Understanding? So what Marx told, who should have got the more value? It should have been the labor. But who's pocketing that excess value in the name of profits? It is the capitalist. Because he is telling, now I am going to invest further into business. That is only called as theory of surplus value. Means he explained in capitalist system how exploitation happens. So the labor component what should have been given, that is not valued. Has been taken away. So this is the exploitation that is happening. And this is what he calls as your profit. Whose profit? Capitalist profit. Which should rightfully have been gone to whom? To the worker. That is what is Marx's argument. But some will disagree with it. The capitalists, or you can say liberals, they say no, that why the capitalist will take a greater value, because he is taking that risk. That's a different argument that will come later. But this is the argument what he made. So when this is the thing, means you have to make profit, you will have to exploit the labor. Without exploitation of labor, you can't make profit. And that is why he says that what? Capitalists will sow the seeds of his own destruction, or capitalist will dig his own grave. Now, because of this exploitation, what Marx says, one thing positive about capitalism is that compared to feudalism, if you look at capitalism, there are certain changes. Feudalism was a setup in rural areas. Capitalism is a setup in urban areas. All the workers are located in one locality. Now in capitalism period, since they're all located in one locality, now what he says, their consciousness will grow. So in the previous two era, that is slave society, feudal society, the consciousness means what? Self-awareness, being aware of what is actually happening, was very low. In what? Slave period, serf period. But here, because the exploitation has reached the peak, where the exploitation becomes unbearable, that is when your consciousness will grow, consciousness will develop. So now what he will tell, uses the term class in itself, they become class for itself. I repeat the word again. He says, from class in itself, they'll become what? Class for itself. So class in itself means where they have low social consciousness. Means you are not understanding anything. You are not understanding the mode of production. You are not understanding why exploitation is happening. You are not aware what is the reason that you are poor. On in simple terms, it can be fed to into your head. You are poor because you are lazy. Somebody is rich because they are hardworking. Your consciousness is very less. You are not thinking also. But when the working class, that is the labor class, because now it is happening in urban setup, communication is easy, they witness it, condition has become unbearable. Now they'll start thinking, their consciousness will grow. So that transformation will happen. From class in itself, they become for what? Class for itself. When they became more conscious, being more conscious means what? Now you are very well aware of your material conditions. Now you will understand why you are poor, why you are being exploited, why this exploitation is happening in the first place. And then you will find the answer for this exploitation. What is the reason for exploitation? The mode of production. And currently what mode of production is there? Capitalist mode of production. And what is central to the capitalist mode of production? Private ownership of property. Simple understanding, breaking down. He told what? Your consciousness will grow. Once you become conscious, now you are aware of why your exploitation is happening. Why that exploitation is happening? Because of capitalist mode of production. And what is capitalist mode of production? Private ownership of property. Because of this private ownership of property, society is being divided into two classes, haves and have-nots. Understood? What do you mean by you use the word class in itself to the word class for itself? And please link all these points to the point I'm speaking about. What is that? Why does he say that capitalists dig their own grave? You're understanding his explanation? Understanding? So Marx's prediction is what? It is inevitable. Capitalism will come. Every society will go through the period of capitalism. And once capitalism occurs, only then socialism can arise. Why? Because for your consciousness to grow, capitalism is very much necessary. Understanding? That is what he is saying. Every society. See, the thing is that what he is telling is that everything will not happen, every part of the world, or the defenders of Marx, what they will tell, the whole world is not working in tandem. There are some parts of the world which are already in the capitalist phase. There are some parts of the world which are still in feudal phase. If you take Asia, Africa, etc. But if you take Europe, okay. So understood what Marx is told, why capitalism is inevitably led to destruction. Because he says that this will lead to what? Growth of consciousness. Now, what do you mean by being conscious? So, Marx says that being aware. Being aware about what? Now, one is material condition, but being aware of your identity, which is your true identity. For Marx, your true identity is your class identity. All other identities are false consciousness. You telling I am a Muslim, I am a Christian, I am a Hindu, I am a Sikh. He says it is false consciousness. You are living in your own world. Means when we want to form a group, identity becomes very important to form a group. Now Hindus might have formed a group, Muslims have formed a group, Christians have formed a group, Buddhists have formed a group. On what basis? All our identities are same. Our belief system are same. Belief system means religion is an idea. Religion is not a matter. It's an idea. Can agree on that, right? Simple. Your idea, let it be anything. You worship the way you want. But still it's an idea. Not matter, because if you tell it's a material condition, I think no religion in the world has ever shown God material. There is no religion, right? No religion in the world, we might give a material shape to the idea. But there is no religion in the world where we have seen God. It's not there. So for Marx, he says that is false consciousness. That is why he says religion, nationality, the idea of nation state, that is also false, he says. He told the idea of nation state was required for capitalism to grow. You understand, right? When capitalists formed, means the birth of the idea of nation state quickly at the same time period when capitalism arose. So he says that you are an Indian, you are American, etc. He told worker everywhere, same condition. Worker everywhere belonging to any religion, same condition. But that you need to realize, that is what he says. You are in false consciousness. That's not your true identity. So, when that is the case, you are more of a class in itself because your consciousness is low. But under capitalism, your consciousness will grow. So, at this point of time, that is where we need to connect Marx's view on religion. Marx told religion is the opium of masses. Religion is what? Opium of masses. Opium means what? Ganja. So in olden days, they used to give opium to do operations, etc. Why? Because it will help you to bear the pain. What this is equating is that under capitalism, you are under so much pain, but still people will find that relief in what? Religion. Means he says in a way, I sympathize with the working class. Why? Because he tells that they are looking to God to solve all their problems. And that is why he is equating what? Religion is the opium of masses. So, religion is making them living in a false world. Like when you take ganja, you might be in a different world, unaware of your external thing. Same way, he is saying that. So that is why Marx believes that religion should be banned. Marx believed that what? It is not God who has made man, it is man who has made God. And that's why we say that usually the communist states, they believe in the idea of atheist state. Atheist state means what? No religion only. Understand? You are understanding the point what Marx is telling. all your other identities, religious identity, national identity, for Marx it is all false. For him, man's true identity is what? Is class identity. Why it is? What do you mean by a class identity? People facing similar type of issues, problems, etc., all belong to one particular class. And for Marx, class does not just represent people doing same work, people in same situation. And for him, class is always relative. Relative means class cannot exist independently. For him, class is always two classes will be there. If there is only capitalist class, then there can be working class. And conflict between them is inevitable. That is why he told the history of hitherto existing societies is history of class struggle. So now, since in capitalism your consciousness grew, now class for all these years they were what? Class in itself. Now they became what? Class for itself. Means what? You became conscious. Conscious about what? What is the root cause of exploitation? What is the root cause of exploitation? Private ownership of property. Now Marx predicts that what? Only one way to come out of this situation is revolution. And that is where he links his idea of revolution. Where Marx says that violence is the midwife violence is the midwife of revolution. You are understanding, right? These are all different theories, but I am linking all the theories for you to understand Marx. But and then you can read the theories independently. But if you don't understand them, then you will feel it's more like you are by-hearting the theory. You are understanding there is a logical connection in from one part to there is a logical connection between historical materialism, dialectical materialism, class conflict, theory of surplus value, what is that? Revolution. Okay. So since now the working class they become truly conscious and they understood that what is the root cause of all their struggle? Private property. So what will be the solution? You have to change the mode of production. Throw the capitalist mode of production. Means abolish private ownership of property. For this, there has to be a revolution. So Marx, that is what you go back and I said now for what Marx says, the seeds of socialism are sowed in the womb of capitalism. So every society will have to go through a period of capitalism. Then once they go through a period of capitalism, it is inevitable. Socialism will arise. Why it will arise? People will revolt. And what he says here, violence is the midwife of revolution. So whom do you call as a midwife? Who is a midwife? Who is a midwife? What's up? Oh, modes of production alone. Midwife andre yaro general age. Basically one who helps during the childbirth. That we call as a midwife. When a woman gives birth, the other woman or who will help them to give birth, that we call as a midwife. Okay, so here the role of a midwife is what? To help, to aid. So now you connect the sentence. Violence is the midwife of revolution. Means what? Violence will help the revolution to happen. Means without violence, there cannot be revolution. So what Marx is equating here is that for any new child to be born or a new baby to be born, birth cannot happen without bloodshed. blood has to be spilled. Same way, when a new society is going to be born, it cannot be born, peaceful transformation. There will be bloodshed. There will be violence. It is inevitable for the working class to fight, and it will take a violent path. The reason is that capitalists won't sit silently. Capitalists will use every method to suppress the revolution. The capitalists will have everything under their control. This is where you need to understand his next idea, that is called as the base and super structure. I'll connect that idea here. Understood? Why did he tell violence is the midwife of revolution? Why did he say? Because as he said, no child can come or no baby can come into this world without spill of blood. Same way, new society cannot be formed without violence. There is going to be bloodshed. Why there is going to be bloodshed? The capitalist class, they are not going to give up their property without a fight, and it is inevitable. So that will lead to what? Violence. Violence becomes inevitable. Understood? So for this point, I am linking his next concept, that is what? Base and superstructure. So here, to understand why should you use violence, or how does the capitalist can control you or control the society. So this is where Marx explains the role of state. I don't know, for Hegel, he told what? State is the march of God on earth. But Marx never considered state that way. He always believed state is an instrument of state is an instrument of exploitation. State is an instrument of exploitation. What do you mean by that? To exploit somebody, I need some instrument. So, capitalist is exploiting whom? Working class. And what is the instrument he is using to exploit? State. So here state refers to what? Executive, judiciary, police, military, etc. If you read fundamental rights, article 12, you would have read a definition of a state. He's not speaking about that, I'm generating. So now to understand how the capitalists will control the state, that is where we are going to link Marx's base and superstructure. What we are going to link? Marx's idea of base and superstructure. So if you remembered that time I told, to understand any Marxist idea, what was central? To understand any Marxist idea, I told what was central? Economic. If you take Marx, he says that base, foundation of a society, is economics. Economics here I mean means of production, mode of production, forces of production. Forces means to what degree you are able to control the resources. Now, superstructure, it's a reflection of the base, meaning whoever controls the base, they automatically control the superstructure. So in superstructure you have state, religion, civil society, okay, whatever, schools, etc. So for Marx, who controls the base? capitalist. And he told superstructure is a reflection of the base. So, since capitalists will control the mode of production, capitalists will also indirectly control what? The superstructure. He controls the state. So, the state, according to Marx, is not a neutral agency. You mind? For Marx, state is not a neutral agency. It appears to be neutral. But for Marx, state will always work in the interest of the capitalist class. The state will always do things to protect the interest of the capitalist. Why? Capitalist controls the mode of production. In simple terms, to simplify what Marx is telling, politics is dependent on economics. One who controls the economics, he will control the politics. So, for example, 88% of India's MPs in Lok Sabha are crorepati's. Means unless you have money power, you will not have political power. Getting a point? What Marx is trying to say. But see, this we can't bring this into equation to Indian context, etc., because it's different. Okay, this we are only looking from Marxian point of view, because Marx wrote these ideas in terms of Europe. India will come to later, to what extent we can apply these ideas. But this is what Marx, he said, in general. The state is not neutral. State always works in the interest of whom? The capitalist class. Because capitalist class control what? The mode of production. If they control mode of production, they control the state. Now, since now when their mode of production is threatened, why it is threatened? Because for Marx, there is no use of changing the state. You need to change the mode of production. Unless mode of production does not change, So you need to attack here. Means what? Abolish private property. But the private property is owned by whom? Capitalist. Capitalist controls what? State. State means police, military, etc. So when you try to go and attack private property, they are not going to sit silent. And that is why he says violence is the midwife of revolution. Without violence, you cannot change the mode of production. Understand why he says that violence becomes inevitable? Got it? The argument of Marx here. You're understanding? That's what I told. Theory of surplus value, base and superstructure, etc., etc. All these were different theories, but I'm trying to link it in a systematic way through his explanation that how this revolution happens, why this revolution happens. Understanding? So in exam, they might not ask in this way. They might ask only in parts. They might ask theory of surplus value. They might ask base and superstructure. But if you have a better understanding, you can write a very complete answer. Otherwise, what will happen? You will just try to by heart and try to write. So any doubt here till now? Violence, why he told is midwife of revolution. Now, the another point we need to connect here also is during capitalism, in capitalist phase, Marx also speaks about an idea called as alienation. Means you can link his idea of alienation as one more critic of capitalism. So here we need to understand what is alienation, and we need to understand according to Marx why alienation happens. So in simple terms, Marx says that capitalist society or capitalism leads to alienation of man. I repeat again, what does Marx say? Capitalism leads to alienation of man. So first of all, what is the meaning of the word alienation? Separation. You are being separated. When you feel that no longer you realize who you are. That's a feeling called as alienation. So to understand his idea of alienation, first you need to understand what is Marx's view of human nature. Because you have studied all this time now Machiavelli's view of what is Marx's view of human nature. For Marx, he calls these Plato, Aristotle as all liars. And he says all these people, they have given too much importance or significance to intellectual abilities of man, not physical work of man. Because if you look at Plato and Aristotle, they always classify those people who are the labor class as inferior compared to those who are intellectuals. So they say that's a blatant lie. The reason why he says that the true character of a man or a human being is to produce. Why? Because first you have to survive now. You can think only when you have something to eat. Only thinking will not fill your stomach. So for Marx he says that what? The main intention of true character of man is to produce, production. And he told man is very creative by nature. By nature is very creative. He wants to create multiple things, etc. That is the true nature of man. He wants to innovate, he wants to invent, he wants to create. Now this is what is the true nature of man, but under capitalism, man will lose all this creativity. Okay, man, he says, becomes reduced to a status of machine. In a capitalist mode of production, you are nothing but a machine. There is no human value here. It means he is speaking from a point of view of a labor. So he explains that how you get alienated, and he gives 4 stages of alienation. One is alienation from production. What do you mean by alienation from production? So let us think, for example, let us think, now this fellow is going to make a pot, madke. He knows what kind of pot he wants to make. He is making that pot. He is involved in the production process. Now let us think this fellow was a pot maker. Now tomorrow becomes a factory worker. Only one job he has to do in a day. Agarbattis are manufactured. He'll put plastic cover over it. That's his job. Functional specialization. Or maybe you are working in a Benz car company. Your role is to put the, what is it, sticker wherever it is required. Every day you keep doing the same job. So obviously you even don't know what the final product looks like. You are getting mind. Your creativity is nothing is there. Where there is no room for creation. Come every day, do the job same every day, go back home. Right? You are not involved in the design process, etc. You are just like a machine. Every day you come, do the same work, go back. So that is the first level of alienation. You are getting alienated from the production. You are reduced to a cog in the machine. Means you are like a machine part. Next stage of alienation. You get alienated from the product. You might work in a Benz company. It's like we say, na, a cobbler's son does not have shoes to wear. You might work in a shoes company, but your own children does not have their wear shoes. You might work in a Benz company, but you can't buy that Benz car. Why? Because you don't have that kind of source of income. You are alienated from the product. Means what you produce, that also you can't own that product. Why? Because that product is not yours. You are producing it for somebody else, somebody's needs. And why you can't buy that product? Let us think he is a labor in a Benz company. Why he can't buy the Benz car? Huh? his salary is low. That is the reason he can't buy the Benz car. What Marx says that here, since the labor is more, that you are exploiting it. I don't know, go back to theory of surplus value. What profit should have gone to the labor that is being pocketed by the capitalist? You are getting only partial income. So the capitalist will pay you that. In reality, if you look at it, happens if you are in construction sector. If you are, let us take your work in construction sector, you are running a construction company, or you are what you can say. I'm not getting the word. The person who construct, what we call. I'm amazing, but I'm telling builder, what do you call builder, contractor. If you ask any contractor, you go ask any contractor, they will never pay the full wages to their laborers. They will never pay. Even if you are a contractor also, you will not pay. Why you will not pay? They should come back next day. So, if you pay them very good salary, that fellow will feel no longer I need to work. So, you pay them only that much and keep them in a position where there is no other way, they will have to work for their family to run. Otherwise, their family cannot run. So, he will have to come back to work. And only if he comes back to work, you can make profits. Similarly, every business is like that. We might be blind to it, but that is the reality. So, for example, in like we have family business, we do cement. So, in reality, our labors are the main thing. Profits we are taking. What we are doing, we'll bring cement bags. If we got license, the labor will go, will deliver the bag. Driver is there to take the bag. But profits we are taking high. They are getting salary. That is very minimal. And that too how? We also don't pay full salary. Because that fellow will not come if you pay him a full salary. So always the money should be on your side. Or always you have to keep in a position that he should always feel that what? There is some kind of financial crunch. If that financial crunch is not there, 100% that fellow won't come. And that is why if you see in Manrega program is only implemented during non-harvesting seasons. Why? Because if you invest Manrega during harvesting season, you don't get labor. Even if you see in construction sector, before Tamilians used to be a lot in these masons, etc. Now it is all North Karnataka people. Tamilians won't come now. Why they won't come? Because in Tamil Nadu, they have implemented these Manrega, Amma canteen, etc. So why that fellow will come from Tamil Nadu to work here? He won't come. Understanding? So what Marx says that capitalist will not pay the salary that is really required. He is going to pay him a very minimal amount. Means keep him in a position where he has to work. He has to come back to work. That is now what you are getting. So family, you are going only back to your house to what? To eat, sleep, rest, come back to work. So there is no time for your family. So you spend more time in a factory, then you spend more time in your house. A capitalist will spend more time in his house than he spends in a factory. Simple now, hotel owner is not in hotel. He is chilling out somewhere. Who is every day in hotel? The waiters. Simple now, why? Because money, capital. That is the power of capital. I have capital, I have made investment. Like you can be an investor. Invest in various business. Once that business picks up, take the profit. But for that fellow who is working, that fellow will have to work. Why? He needs money, he needs to run his family. So he does not get time to spend with his what? Family. And he says capitalism also benefits in a way from women. How? Now these workers are married in their house. They go back to house. Who will cook food for them? We are speaking about Europe. Now you can tell, no sir, there is equal work. I'm telling in labor class families, it is the wives who will have to cook the food. Wives will have to clean the house. Wives will have to get your clothes washed. Now, if you take all that into value, so currently that is not included under GDP. We include that under care economy, right? Means the thing I'm telling, your mother in your house, she's cooking food for you. She's washing your clothes. She's cleaning your house. Now that is all done free of cost. Now if you value it and you say you have to pay for every service that you receive, means imagine that your house is only like a hotel, that you are eating food from everywhere, you have to pay for it. So obviously it is going to become very costly. So your salary should be fixed according to your expenses. But this is all not an expense only. Why? Because this is all done free. And that is what he says. Means later you will read about when you write Engels. Engels is Marx's partner. Means when you read feminism, when you read about Marxist feminism. So Marxists argue that capitalism and patriarchy are intertwined. Capitalism benefits from patriarchy. Why? Because capitalism is not valuing all this. This is all free service given in the house. So double benefit now. So you're getting free service being done for this labor. Because labor should be kept healthy now. Otherwise he can only then come and work in your factory. So who is keeping them healthy? In their house. So he's only going to house as for what? Rest, sleep, food. Rest of the number of times he is working in the factory. So you got alienated from whom? Family. So alienated from product, you are alienated from production, you are alienated from family, and ultimately you get alienated from yourself. Means now you will start realizing, am I really a human being? So generally we say, you need to work to live, not live to work. And that is what we generally say. Fast, life is moving very fast. Life is not moving very fast. We have been sucked into that system. Life is not moving fast. It's your decision to move faster. Ultimately, that is how the society is organized. You have to work to live. But problem is what has happened. Instead of working to live, you are living to work. Means the only purpose you are alive is to work. And work for whom? Not for your creativity, your benefit. It is for somebody else's creativity, somebody else's dream. So that is what he says, that capitalism will alienate man. And that's why I told, to understand his alienation, first you have to understand what is Marx's description of human nature. He told humans are what? Humans are creative. Humans are social beings, social animals. He didn't agree with Aristotle. When Aristotle told humans are political animals, he told no. Man can live without state. Because Aristotle, I don't know, one who lives outside the state is either God or beast. He disagreed with it. He told it's a blatant lie. Man has lived without state, can live without state. Not required. Man is essentially a social animal. But now capitalism has what it has done to this social animal. It has alienated him from what? Production, product, family, and self. Understood? The link what Marx gives, that how capitalism reduces man nothing but to a machine. Got it? See, criticism will come later. There are critics to this theory. You have Karl Popper, who disagrees with Marx, who says this is completely incorrect. Why completely incorrect? Because some says that Marx is biased. Means he's only writing negative things about capitalism. He's ignored the positive things about capitalism. So some would argue that capitalism has led to innovations. Capitalism has led to invention. Or defenders of capitalism, they will tell when it is the capitalist who has taken the risk. He has every right to say that he has also the right to take the profits. And some also argue that Marx suffers from economic determinism. What do you mean by economic determinism? Marx tries to explain everything only through only one factor, that is economics. They say that is incorrect. Some argue that to explain things, you need to have cultural factors, you need to have political factors, you need to have psychological factor. But they say that the problem with Marx is what? He is deducing or reducing everything only to one thing. That is what? Economics. You have Max Weber, who is one more sociologist, who again disagrees with Marx, because he says, because Marx told capitalism gave birth to religion. You are understanding? According to Marx, capitalism gave birth to religion to keep people in false consciousness. This Max Weber, he's written a book. Max Weber has written a book, okay, that is called as the Protestant Ethics. Where he brings the other argument. He says that it is religion who gave birth to capitalism. It is not that capitalism gave birth to religion, because he traces back to this Christianity. So in Christianity are two major sects, that is Catholics and Protestants. So he says that the rise of Protestants in Europe, it led to rise of capitalism, because if you look at these Catholics in that regard, means when Protestants rose against Catholics, they projected who is an ideal man. Ideal man is a person who works hard. An ideal man who is a person who is a maker of his own destiny. Unlike the Catholics who had projected, man as something as, deeply religious, etc. Protestants more emphasized on man to be more productive. And according to Max Weber, the rise of Protestants in Europe, or especially in England, after this glorious revolution, a king who is a Protestant, he will become the king, and Protestants will start to control the England politics in that regard. And that is what he says, that the Protestants' belief system that led to the rise of capitalism. Understand? So that is one critic brought by whom? Max Weber, saying that what Marx is telling is incorrect, because for him he told capitalism gave birth to religion, but for Max Weber he argues that it is the rise of Protestants in Christianity that led to the rise of capitalism. That's one more counterpoint. Or some also argue that what Marx is saying, it is more Eurocentric. What do you mean by Eurocentric? He's only explaining things taking Europe as an example. You can't apply these things to Asia, Africa. The reason, so for Marx, true identity of man is what? Class identity. Means in those societies where capitalism arose, class identity. But let us look the same issue from an Indian point of view. That's why I told you can't apply Marx idea as it is to India. So let us look from an Ambedkar's perspective. Ambedkar might agree with certain ideas of Marx, But Ambedkar also disagrees with certain, means that you will understand once you read Ambedkar's ideas, then you compare with Karl Marx. You will find that both are there. There are certain areas where Ambedkar agrees with Marx. There are completely ideas where Ambedkar's ideas and Marx ideas are completely divergent. Okay, that I'll go in totality when I do Ambedkar. But for now, so if you look for Ambedkar, he told class is not the true identity in India, a society like India. Caste is the mosaic of Indian politics or Indian society. It is not class. So if you actually see in India, rather than class, it is caste. There are areas where caste and class overlap, but we cannot tell caste and class are same. There is one fundamental difference between class and caste. What is it? In class, social mobility is possible. A lower class fellow can become upper class. But in caste, social mobility is not possible. It is fixed. So I don't think so there is any process where you can change your caste. There are processes where you can change your religion. But there is no process in any book anywhere written where you can change your caste. It is fixed from the time of birth. What Marx told, his ideas might be relevant for European societies, but it cannot be directly relevant to Asian societies. You need to make modifications to it. And one such modification is that what Ambedkar told, class is not the true character of Indian society, it is caste. And that is why in India, if you take, even when we identify the social beneficiaries, we identify them based on caste. I'm not saying not only caste along with that class may be there. So for example, let us take OBCs. For OBCs, both caste and class will come. How caste and class? Your caste might belong to OBC, but whether you come under creamy layer or non-creamy layer, that is a class factor. You remind? So we use both caste and class. Like EWS, it is more of a class factor. SC, ST and OBC, it is more of a caste determinant. And that is why we say caste is an inevitable aspect of Indian politics. And that is also one of the reasons later you will be able to connect in part B. In part B, we will read about a topic called as political parties in India. There we will read about current issues. Okay, basic you will read, nobody is going to ask you in political science mains exam, how do we determine national parties, how do you determine state parties? They won't ask questions like that. They will mainly ask ongoing issues. So in previous year, they've asked decline of the left in India. Or they've asked beforehand the rise of BJP in Indian politics. So this we need to understand through the lens of understanding class, caste, voter behavior, everything is interlinked. So one point here, if you observe, Marxism ideology, what is there? Based on that ideology, which political party is there in India? The communist. But what is the current status of communists in India? We say there is no more left in India. And one of the reasons for left parties weakening electoral performance, the reason is that the left parties in India always try to work the same way on the Marxian ideas of class-based politics. That will not work in Indian politics. The BJP or the Congress, they are more successful electorally. The reason is because both parties, they bank on caste-based politics. Left parties only based on class-based politics. There are other reasons to it. One, you can say the growth of middle class in India. The middle class are not attracted towards Marxian ideas or class factor. Or the other factor to that you can also relate is the rise of Hindutva politics in India since 1980s or 1990s. That we'll read later. You have different reasons for it. You have Christopher Jeffer Lott who gives a study. You have Thomas Blom Hansen. He's written a book called as the Saffron Wave. So they go on to analyze and explain and presented research papers saying that why the rise of BJP, started to increase after 1980s or 1990s. There are a lot of reasons to it. The Shah Bano judgment, the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, the rise of OBCs in Indian politics, and you have the Indira Sani judgment. Everything is logically connected. Okay, that I'll take time to explain. That I'll explain later. But yeah, coming back to the point, both BJP and the Congress have been largely electorally successful. The reason one, both parties work on reality of Indian society. That is what caste is an important. Communists largely work on the class factor. So in India, you don't have this working class and capitalist class. You have a huge middle class. And middle class identity is only different. Some will identify as Hindus, some will identify as Vokkaligas, some might identify as Muslims. They're all broken apart. You're getting a point. So people belonging to middle class might vote on the lines of what? Which caste they belong to, which religion they might belong to. But nobody is going to vote here only based on the class factor. Or some might be also that it also matters to a certain extent. For example, job creation, GDP. Communist Party will always speak about what? Okay, if we come to power, we will nationalize everything. And to fight in election, you need money. And who is going to give you that money? Capitalist. And why will a capitalist come and dig his own grave? He is never going to fund a communist party. They are either going to fund BJP or either going to fund the Congress. It depends upon whoever is in a better position. The capitalists will also change this thing. It runs now like BJP is doing good, so capitalists are behind BJP. Maybe tomorrow Congress might change waves, then they will go and back the Congress. Simple, for capitalists, BJP or Congress are not important. For them, profits are important. Who can bring them to power? That is what we say. We say the ruler is faceless because ruler is not Modi. There are forces behind Modi. That's the truth. It's not that Rahul Gandhi is very genius or anything. There are forces operating behind Rahul Gandhi. For the common supporters, minions, they only see Rahul Gandhi and they only see Modi. And they only Jai Rahul Gandhi or Jai Modi. They don't go beyond that extent to understand, okay, what are the forces that are operating. That is how the current politics work. So, for Communist Party, obviously no money power. They don't work within the social reality of caste is an important component. As I told, class, this is not Europe where you have working class and you have capitalist class, you unite the workers. Trade unions, at one point of time they were stronger. Trade unions now almost decimated. Every party has its own trade union. No longer it's that all the workers will go and support the Communist Party. BJP has its own trade union. Congress has its own trade union. Communist Party has its own trade union. Aam Aadmi Party has its own trade union. So obviously further what weakening of the thing. And the problem with again the left-based parties in India, the leaders, left leaders you there, you might be knowledgeable, but no use. Why no use? You can give lectures in TV, you can give lectures in classroom, but reality is different. Now, who is going to come and vote for you? Do you have the organizational capacity? That is lost. Means communist parties don't have the organizational strength like what they used to have in 1970s or 1980s. Currently, why BJP is more successful? Because BJP has the organizational strength. Get a point? So BJP's victory is not only based on EVMs and all. That is Congress's story. Losers will have to give some reasons. They will tell like how when India won the World Cup, Pakistan gave the reason that India played the matches in only one stadium. That is why they won the World Cup. Simple. You can't win. You give 100 reasons. The reality is different. The other difference reality, what people think is that BJP is winning. Why? Because they have social media under their control. Who told? Social media was also under Congress control also. Social media is not owned by anybody. The main victory for BJP, apart social media is all there, but apart from social media, their organizational strength they have on the ground. That can't be matched by any other party in India currently. And for the organizational strength of the BJP, it comes from the RSS. And RSS's organization is deeply ingrained. It is in the ground. Simple. If you go into the RSS structure, they have somebody called as road pramukh. For every road, there is a person who is responsible to convince and convey the people what message the government is sending. That is what we call as your organizational capacities, capabilities. Any BJP leader you see, be it Modi, be it Amit Shah, be it Yadurappa, or except one or two like Bommai, these are exceptions. Every Vajpayee, Advani, what is one common thing in all of them is that all of them have come from the ground level. Whether we agree with their ideology, we disagree with their ideology, that is a different, it's not an ideological thing. If you study them, what is one strong point about them is that their leaders, be it Yogi Adityanath, they all come from the ground level. Means, initial of their career, they have been organizers. Either working in the RSS or working in the BJP, and only then they have been elevated when their organizational capacity has been identified. Organization is a capability. What do you mean organization? Jana Sersadu means bringing people. It is not an easy job. If I go and tell you organize an event, I will give a speech. Do you think people will automatically come? It has to be organized. You need to have people in ground who can bring people to your rallies. Money is secondary. Money will be spent. Even in spite spending money, you might not. That is why you can say recently in Bihar, the Congress suspended the Congress, the local thing. Why? Because for Karge's speech, people only are not there. The reason is that they don't have the organizational capacity. The advantage for the BJP is that they have a very strong organizational machinery, and that will work. The left-based party, at some point of time, they had this organizational machinery. Today, they don't have. What you have, most of them delivering lecturers in TV or you can say universities. Electorally, what they won't do any dent. Simple. Now, what lecture you give in rural area, who is going to watch your lecture? Who is going to watch your lecture? And that is why you can say the decline of left in India has happened. The rise of BJP or the Congress in India. Why? Because left, like what Ambedkar said, you can't apply what Marx told completely in totality to Indian context. So that is one of the critique is that what Marx told is largely Eurocentric. And if you look at India, actually India is not even industrialized. Means we have never seen completely an industrialized phase of India. If you look at our economic growth also, largely it is a service sector led growth. And that is why India does not fit into this Marxist program. Understand from where to where we can link Marx. So from part A we can also go to part B and we can also analyze the evolution of parties in India. And currently our analysis why BJP performs well electorally. There are a lot of factors. Organization, funding, personalities, okay, everything will suit into the current BJP's context. That is why BJP electorally are very powerful. Why Communist Party is not electorally powerful? Same thing. You can't apply the same lens. So that is one critique against Marx was that what he told was more Eurocentric. Understand? These are the criticisms what you can bring regarding to the ideas given by whom? Karl Marx. Any doubt here? Coming back to Marx, the point what we are discussing, alienation. So he told alienation will happen. Then we also told that what he told, because of this alienation, man now they will realize the true reason for their exploitation. What is that? Private property. And he also told what you can only fight for this through what? Revolution. And what kind of revolution? Violent revolution. And also explained why he told violence is the midwife of revolution. Now, next what he told is a prediction. You get a point? Next two stages. So, till now you read from primitive communism, then you had slave society, then you had feudal society, then you had capitalism. Understanding historical evolution or historical materialism, material condition fixing. Now in capitalism, this is where this stage he'll tell this revolution is bound to happen. The question might come, why didn't the revolution happen here? Why didn't the revolution happen here? Consciousness was not there. Whole world where you can you apply in Pakistan? Can you apply it in China? Not necessary. It's not only about caste. So means you have not yet completed. Even if you come to Europe, where did that revolution happen? Tell me one European country where it happened. Which country? The only country that happened was Russia. And Russia was not even industrialized. The other country was China. China is also not industrialized. And where in Europe you find collapse of capitalism, rise of communism? Not happened. Capitalism is still staying strong within Europe. The reason for that you will understand later. Okay, what Marx told ideas, it is not that these ideas can be applied in rest of the world. Some say Marx is also biased. In that sense, Marx only selectively chose history to selectively put forward his point. Because he told in history, human history, you find only class conflict. But you have a person called as Peter Kropotkin. He has written this book called as Mutual Aid. What does Peter Kropotkin say in this book? He told what Marx is telling is incorrect. It is factually incorrect. What is factually incorrect? He says that Marx can be accused of historicism. Historicism means using history selectively to choose your narrative. That is called as historicism. Means using historical facts and interpreting the way you want and not presenting all the facts. So for example, now you take Tipu Sultan. Is a controversy between BJP and the Congress. It depends upon the way you see. Tipu Sultan can be also seen as a reformer or a revolutionary. Tipu Sultan can be also seen as a Hindu killer, etc. Both are true, both elements are there. But it depends upon what you will look at and how you will put your story across. That's the problem with human history always. History should be introspected from multiple angles. But what is happening is that history is used politically in a particular way to suit a particular narrative. So what this fellow told, what Marx also did was selecting certain human history selectively, fit that human history into his explanation, saying that human history is nothing but conflict. But Peter Kropotkin says that I can give you 100 examples. If you look at human history, where classes have cooperated. Take example, Indian national movement. The capitalist class, the working class, they all cooperated together. So he says that this is incorrect what Marx is telling. It is only the partial truth. So there are critics against Marx. So it's not that his ideas can be implemented everywhere. His ideas have been influenced everywhere. But whether his idea can be implemented everywhere, still his ideas is only not completed now. Revolution is only one part of the idea. After revolution, what will happen? Next prediction, what will give? So he will tell now what will happen. Here the working class will come together and they will overthrow the state. Which state? State controlled by the capitalists. And they will establish their government. That he calls it as dictatorship. dictatorship of proletariat. Means what? Dictatorship of the working class. He will tell it will be required. Because for Marx, communism is not automatically born out of destruction of capitalism. There is going to be a temporary phase, and that temporary phase, what you call as dictatorship of proletariat or socialism. Meaning, even after the revolution, still there are certain remainings of capitalism. Private property is still not completely abolished. But now the state will be taken over by the working class. They'll form their own party to run the state. So he calls the word, uses the word dictatorship of proletariat. Why it is dictatorship? The capitalists will not have any rights. Now what the working class will tell, that you have to tell. And he will tell it is fine. He will tell this temporary dictatorship is needed, it is good. The reason he says that in capitalism, when capitalism was there was liberal democracy. And he says that is not democracy at all. Why? Because he says democracy should be always the majority. But there the democracy is controlled by minority, that is the capitalists. Now he says under dictatorship of proletariat, this is truly democratic. Why? Because the majority are now controlling the minority. And over a period of time, this working class party, they will ensure there is no more any class difference. What do you mean by there is no more any class difference? There is no more private property. Everything will belong to community. Work will be divided among community members. So slowly what he will tell, what will happen over a period of time, the state will wither away. What he will tell? State will wither away. So what do you mean by state will wither away? State will no longer be needed. So once the state withers away, now everything will be owned by the community. They will establish communes. And now he says what will happen. The final stage what he spoke about, the perfect material condition, that history has come to an end with what? Establishment of communism. That is what? A classless and stateless society. Since there is no private property, there is no more class distinction. So if there is no classes, why do you need a state? Because state is always an instrument of one class to exploit the other class. So this is the perfect state or perfect material condition for man. So now what he will tell is that during socialism, the idea of equality will be each according to his ability. Means how they are going to distribute things based on your contribution. Let us think this fellow is working 10 hours. This fellow is working 6 hours. You pay him, salary will be same per hour 1000 rupees. So you pay him 10,000, you pay him how much? 6,000. That was during socialism. But once communism has been established, there is no private property, everything belongs to the state. Now he says how distribution will be. It will be each according to his needs. Means here, this fellow might be working 10 hours, that fellow might be working 6 hours. But that fellow has 3 children, this fellow has no children. Now you won't distribute things according to their abilities. You will distribute things according to their necessities or needs. And for this to happen, it can only happen if you have excess resources. Simple, na? If there are 10 members in the class and I have only 3 iPhones, then I can't distribute based on your need. I have to distribute based on your ability. But let us think I have 20 iPhones and I have only 18 people in the class. I can also give an extra iPhone to somebody else who has more needs. That is why some say that this is a very utopian idea. That is why some say that Marx is a god who has failed or who lied. Or some say like Karl Mannheim, he says that this is nothing short of utopia. What is utopia? This is like the story of this Alice and her Wonderland. That Wonderland never existed. It was just a story. But the supporters believe that what? No, this can be achieved, will be achieved. But the opposer says, show me where it has been achieved. There is no example of communism being established everywhere or anywhere. So what Marx told might be true till the point, revolution. But after that, you cannot tell or we cannot agree with what he told was correct. Why? Take Russia. Take China. Russian Revolution happened 1916 or 1917. Chinese Revolution also happened. But did it create communism? What he told, classless, stateless society. Did it create or what? No. What Rosa Luxemburg, she says that it only created dictatorship of proletariat, but that led to dictatorship of one man. Lenin, Stalin, now Putin. So nowhere they have been able to create the perfect society. Or even in Russia and China, currently if you take, it's not that private property is completely abolished. We say China is more of a mixed economic model, just following a communist political structure, but not any kind of economic structure. And the critics, they argue that what, if you look at more development or more prosperity happened in capitalist countries, not in communist countries. The example for that is this East Germany and West Germany. When Germany lost the Second World War, half of Germany was divided between the Americans and the USSR. West Germany was controlled by American and Europeans. East Germany was controlled by Russians. And you can say West Germany developed a lot and people started migrating from East Germany to West Germany, and that led to finally that what Russia building a wall across Berlin, that was called as a Berlin Wall, the Iron Curtain, to prevent people from going, because it was a loss of what you can say name for the USSR. And finally you can say in 1991 USSR itself collapsed. And that led to rise of America, become the most dominant country in the world, and capitalism, some consider as a victory over communism. You know, so what some say that what Marx wrote or what Marx said was true only till the point of that revolution. But after his future predictions did not come true. That is why some consider him as what? A god who has failed. But the supporter says that they defend, saying that it is not God who has failed. They tell the people who implemented that, be it Lenin, Stalin, they did not implement in the true spirit what Marx had said. And they still continue to believe that what communism can be achieved. So that is Karl Marx for you. That is why we consider Marx as half is God to half of the world, but is considered also devil by the other half. And that is why we say Marx is a highly controversial figure. But you can say that but anything about Marx is that he is highly popular. So if there is any ideology named after a person, Marxism is named after Karl Marx. And you can say that he's been able to, his ideas have been able to, if not establish communism, his critique about capitalism has made capitalism more humanitarian. His critique of capitalism made capitalists rethink. Or his ideas have influenced social movements across the world. For example, you think in Europe, the labor movements largely drew inspiration from Marx. Or even movements in India, they have largely driven inspiration from Karl Marx. And that is why Marx is one of the major thinker that is read across. Okay. But at the same time, some critique about Marx, that is why Karl Popper, he considered Marx as also one of the enemy of open society. Because he also defended dictatorship of proletariat. He also, means his ideas what he gave, it also led to what dictatorship establishing in countries like Russia, China, North Korea. So in name of, the critic says that in name of achieving equality, Marx took away liberty. Liberty means right to own property, etc. But they told you lost both. Neither equality was achieved, neither liberty was enjoyed. You ended up without anything. That is one of the critics who criticize the Marxian ideas. Or they say that Karl Mannheim, as I told, he told what Marx told is nothing short of like a utopia. Utopia means something which is not reality. Okay, because Marx was against ideology. Because for Marx, idea represents what? False consciousness. But Karl Mannheim told that Marxism itself is an ideology. And that is also no different. It is also based on false consciousness. So that is why we say the debate between capitalism and communism is unrelenting. So in end you will understand both are not perfect. In end your opinion will be that you can't implement both to the extreme level. It is always to follow the middle path. And that is why if you look at India, when we got independence, we had a choice of either choosing communism or either choosing capitalism, but we went for a mixed economic model. Okay. And even the most successful countries in the world, Finland, Norway, Sweden, etc., if you see them, they follow capitalism with strong social welfare measures. There is capitalism, but there is also state will perform strong welfare measures. Means what? Providing education, health, etc. But if you look at the hardcore systems elsewhere, or those countries which have only tried to follow capitalism in totality, they were also facing problems. Take Britain, take US today, or even those countries which completely tried to follow communism, Lenin, Stalin, etc., collapse. China is a bit more practical, pragmatic. Pragmatic in the sense they follow communism in politics, one party, dictatorship of proletariat. But when it comes to economics, they follow mixed economic model. And that is why we say that capitalism and communism both are, what you can say, you can consider they are only theoretically possible, practically it is not possible. And in the idea, that's what we also say, that you can't establish, according to me, a stateless and a classless society. at least at this point of time, it is practically very, very difficult to establish that you are going to establish a society that is completely classless, or that is going to be completely stateless, or achieving saying that distribution, you are going to bring equality according to your needs, then equality and capability. That is a very practically, uh, I would suggest it is difficult at this point of time. But yeah, the ideas of Marx can be used in what critiquing capitalism, influencing social movements, keeping capitalism in check. But maybe you cannot tell what he told, that communism will replace capitalism across the world. That thought till now has not happened. And it is also many times you can say the why many times we see in India also Communist Party, one more weak point. So in even in today's world, if you see the idea of nation state is very strong. You're getting a point. So obviously, if you come and say, okay, workers in Pakistan, they might be also affected. Lives in Pakistan also matters. Who the hell will vote for you? Telling you, reality is different. Elections are different. If you are going to come and speak and say that no, in Pakistan lives are very matter, we need peace. Now people will point out that is double standards. When you justify violence in the name of class war, but you critique India's retaliation against Pakistan, saying that it is use of violence, that is double standards. And that is why many times you can say that why some communist leaders, they get branded as anti-nationals, etc. The reason that is a simple one, you don't understand their viewpoint, they don't understand your viewpoint. So end of the day, you will never meet each other's viewpoint. And end of the day, your personal relation gets spoiled. There's nothing more to it. And that is a reality also. So that's why we say one who is ideologically indoctrinated, either it is right wing or it is left wing, both don't have a bright future. Politically, you might have. I'm telling in personal relations. In politically, you have to be ideologically very firm. I'm telling in practical terms, if you're either right wing or left wing, completely blinded by the ideology, then you are in practical reality, it is not going to work out. There might be truth in some arguments, but that is what we say, those arguments should be accepted by the public also at large. That can't be accepted by the public many times. You will be seen as what? Maybe as an anti-national. I'm telling you, might not be an anti-national, but people might see that as what? Being anti-national. And especially in Indian elections also, if you see from especially from 2014, nationalism is also one of the electoral factor. Remember, means when it comes to especially Lok Sabha elections, now people are not just voting based on who is their MP, they're also voting based on who should be their PM. And that is when you can say why Pulwama in 2019 helped the BJP to a large extent in doing very well in elections. The reason, that is what we say, the idea of nation is still strong. So what idea you are telling is that class is more important than nation. That is still to take traction, that takes a lot of time. You are getting a point. And the other problem is that for to understand all this, you need that intellectual capability. Otherwise, if you go tell to a common man in that regard, they'll easily brand you as what you are an anti-national or etc. And that is why we can say that theory is different, practicality is very different. But this is what Marx theoretically told. And that is why the controversy over Marx, that he's divided, deeply divided. That some completely agree with Marx. They say that what he's telling can be achieved. But some say literally it is utopia. It can't be achieved at large. Got it? So these are the major ideas of Marx that you have to know. That is what? Class conflict, historical materialism, dialectical materialism. Then you have, what is that? Alienation, theory of surplus value, base and superstructure, and you have what is that one more thing? Marx's view on religion, and Marx's view on dictatorship of proletariat, Marx's view on communism, and Marx's view on equality. So for him, he says that in socialism there will be equality according to your capability, but in communism, equality according to your needs. And that is why I told Marx, what you read is important. Why? Because later also when you study, you can apply these approaches. Got it? And he is one big thinker among all the thinkers here. The next thinker what will be taking up is Gramsci. Gramsci now will give the solution or answers to certain questions. Many people started questioning Marx's prediction went incorrect. Gramsci gave the answer to it. Why that prediction did not come true? Because means he didn't reject Marx. He added other ideas to Marx's ideas. He told Marx had only focused on economic factors, but there are other factors which he didn't speak about. And that is why he says that the consciousness of the people did not develop. So what is that other factor? And Gramsci speaks about something called as hegemony. So for him, capitalists are not controlling only through state, police, or etc. Capitalists are also controlling people through something called as ideas or ideology. Unless that will change, he'll tell that revolution what Marx spoke about will never happen. So what Gramsci told, it is futile to expect that socialism to directly arise from ashes of capitalism. He told that will not happen. Don't expect that capitalism automatically will destroy itself and finally it gives birth to socialism. That it won't happen. And he told there is one more revolution you'll have to do. So that we'll read in the next class. What were Gramsci's ideas? But these are the things that you'll have to know about Karl Marx. So I gave in a historical linkage, but when you read the theories, you can read in parts. But you need to bring logical connection to the connection what we have made. From Hegel, historical materialism, dialectical materialism, class conflict, revolution, alienation, theory of surplus value, what do you mean by means of production, mode of production, relations of production, base superstructure, and what is that, socialism, communism. Got it? So read it once, then in next class we'll continue with Gramsci.